The moment my stepdad told me to get up from the chair, I felt 8 years old again, unwanted, invisible, replaceable. But what he didn't know was that the man he tried to disrespect was the only person who ever taught me I deserved better. Amirah stepped into the hall with Simba's small hand wrapped in hers, trying her best to look calm even though her heart felt heavy. She had dressed simply, choosing clothes that wouldn't attract attention or cause any arguments. All she wanted was one peaceful night for her mother's anniversary dinner, but deep inside, she already knew peace was something she rarely received in this house. Her relatives glanced at her the same way they always did. Quick looks, forced smiles, and then back to their conversations as if she wasn't really part of them. No one asked how she was. No one bent down to greet Simba. They acted like she was just passing through, not like she belonged. The moment she stepped fully into the hall, the memories rushed in. This house had never felt safe for her. Not since Bantu came into their lives. He treated her like an unwanted visitor from the day he married her mother. Every rule felt different for her. Every smile from him felt fake. Every mistake she made, no matter how small, became a story he used to remind her she was a burden. Simba squeezed her fingers, looking up at her with innocent eyes that didn't understand the strange silence around them. She forced a smile, pretending everything was fine, even though her chest felt tight. She walked toward the table slowly, wishing the ground would just swallow her before someone made her feel small again. She hated that she still felt this way, like the little girl who used to stand outside her own bedroom door, listening to them laugh without her. Like the child who once waited in the kitchen until everyone finished eating, because Bantu said there was no space at the table. Tonight felt like one of those nights again. She could sense the coldness in the air. She could feel the whispers hiding behind polite greetings. Even the lights felt too bright, exposing her like she didn't belong. She sat Simba down, brushing his hair gently, trying to focus on him instead of the ache rising in her chest. He was her strength, the reason she kept trying. But as she pulled out the empty chair beside him, something inside her whispered that trouble was coming, that this night would not end softly. And in that small moment, she made a quiet promise to herself, one she had carried for years but never spoken. She would not beg for space again. Not tonight. Not ever. Amirah carefully helped Simba sit on the chair beside her, trying to make him comfortable before she took her own seat. She had barely touched the back of the chair when she heard heavy footsteps behind her. Her heart dropped. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Bantu's voice came out loud, sharp, and made just loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. Move. That chair is for someone important. His words cut through the room. Conversation stopped. Forks paused midair. People turned to look. Amirah's hands froze on the chair. She felt her face grow warm, but her body felt cold at the same time. It was the same feeling she had felt so many times growing up. Small, unwanted, invisible. For a moment, she prayed he was joking. But Bantu stood there with his arms crossed, eyes full of the same irritation he always saved for her. He wanted her to feel embarrassed. He wanted every person in that hall to see that she didn't matter. Memories rushed through her faster than she could stop them. Her 6th birthday, when everyone got cake except her because Bantu said she didn't behave well enough. The nights she ate alone in the kitchen while her mother, Bantu, and his relatives laughed at the dining table. The times he told her she was extra weight in a home that was already full. She swallowed the lump in her throat and forced herself to stand. Felt like she was lifting something heavier than her own body. She didn't want Simba to see her like this, but she didn't know how to protect him from it either. As she stepped aside, Simba tugged her hand and looked up at her with confusion. Mama, why can't we sit? The tiny question hit her harder than Bantu's insult. She saw all the eyes in the room shift to her again, waiting to see how she would answer. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. How could she explain years of pain to a child who only wanted to eat dinner beside his mother? The room turned painfully quiet. Even the music in the background seemed to disappear. Amirah felt every stare pressing into her skin. Some curious, some uncomfortable. A few even entertained. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, and she squeezed Simba's hand gently, trying to stop her voice from shaking. She wished she could run. She wished she could disappear. But she stood there, holding her son close, silently praying that this humiliation would be the last one she ever allowed in her life. Amirah was still standing there, holding Simba close, trying to steady her breathing while the whole room stared at her. Bantu took a step forward, ready to grab the chair as if she had dirted it just by touching it. She could already hear the words he was preparing to say, the ones meant to make her feel smaller, weaker, and out of place. But before he could open his mouth, another voice rose from the entrance, deep, steady, and filled with a power that instantly changed the energy of the whole room. "Sit down, my child." The hall fell silent. People turned and whispers stopped. Amirah's heart jumped because she knew that voice. It belonged to the only person who had ever stood up for her without hesitation. Grandpa Jabari walked in slowly, but with a presence that felt stronger than anyone else in the room. His shoulders were straight, his steps firm, his eyes sharp. Even age could not dim the authority he carried. Wherever he went, respect followed. Amirah felt her eyes sting. She hadn't expected him to come tonight. She hadn't expected anyone to defend her. But here he was, arriving at the exact moment she needed someone the most. He walked straight to her without greeting anyone else. His expression softened when he reached her side, and he placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. Then, without even looking at Bantu, he pulled out the same chair that Amirah had been told to leave. He dragged it back toward her and set it firmly behind her. "Sit," he said kindly, as if she were the most important person in the room. Then he turned his gaze toward the table, toward every person who had watched silently while she was humiliated. His voice grew colder, deeper. "Anyone who cannot respect her does not deserve a seat at my table." It felt like the words struck the air like a stone dropped in water. People shifted uncomfortably. A few lowered their heads. Simba looked up at Jabari with wide eyes, instantly drawn to the strength in his voice. Bantu's face tightened, his jaw clenched, and a flush of anger climbed up his neck. He wasn't used to being challenged. He wasn't used to someone calling him out in front of his own guests. But Jabari didn't care. He had spoken, and no one dared oppose him. Amirah slowly sat down, her hands trembling slightly. For the first time that night, she felt seen. She felt protected. She felt like someone was finally drawing a line that should have been drawn years ago. The dinner resumed, but nothing felt the same anymore. The tension hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. People whispered behind their glasses. Bantu forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And Amirah sat quietly, her heart beating with a mix of relief and fear. Knowing this moment had changed everything. Bantu lifted his glass too quickly, trying to take back control of the room. His smile looked tight, almost painful, like he was forcing it onto his face. He cleared his throat and tapped his glass, pretending nothing had happened moments ago. Everyone turned toward him because they knew he loved giving long speeches at every event. He raised his drink higher and said, "Tonight is about family unity, about coming together and showing love." His words felt strange to Amirah. The same man who just insulted her now wanted to talk about unity. She stared at the table, trying to steady her emotions. Her heart was still recovering from the moment he had tried to humiliate her in front of everyone. But before Bantu could finish even his first sentence, Jabari's voice cut through the hall, calm but powerful. "Unity is not built on humiliation." The whole room stiffened. It was like someone had pulled a thread and every person froze. Some guests gasped quietly. Others exchanged quick looks, unsure what to do. Jabari didn't raise his voice, but his tone was sharp enough to slice through Bantu's fake speech. He didn't need to shout. He simply looked at Bantu with a firm expression that carried years of disappointment. Then he added, "Respect is the foundation of family. Without it, all your speeches mean nothing." The message was clear, direct, undeniable. Bantu's smile fell in an instant. His face darkened, and he lowered his glass slowly. The embarrassment showed in his eyes even if he tried to hide it. He hated being corrected, especially in front of people he wanted to impress. Whispers spread across the room. Some guests leaned toward each other, murmuring under their breath. A few looked uncomfortable, pretending to look elsewhere even though they were fully listening. Amirah sat quietly, her heart heavy and hopeful at the same time. She felt grateful that Jabari spoke up for her again, defending her in a way no one had done for years. But underneath that gratitude was a deep fear. She knew Bantu too well. He never forgave moments like this. He held grudges tightly, and he always found a way to take back his pride, usually by hurting her later. He glanced at Simba, who sat close to her, eating slowly, unaware of the storm building behind the quiet dinner. Amirah felt a cold shiver run through her. She could already sense it. This night would not end here. Bantu would make sure she paid for the embarrassment he felt. And for the first time, she feared the consequences more than the humiliation itself. After the dinner, the house felt different, quieter, colder. The next morning, Amirah noticed the shift immediately. Bantu barely looked at her, but the silence wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before a storm. She could feel the tension in every corner of the house. She tried to focus on Simba, on work, on anything else, but deep down she knew Bantu was planning something. It didn't take long. By the middle of the week, he showed her exactly what his anger looked like. He began by limiting how often she could see her own mother. Whenever she walked into her mother's room, Bantu would suddenly appear, acting as if she was disturbing something important. "Your mother needs rest," he would say coldly, blocking the door. Yet others could go in freely. Only Amirah was treated like an outsider. Then came the whispers. She heard Bantu talking to neighbors, relatives, even friends of the family. "Amirah is ungrateful," he told them. "After everything we've done for her, she still creates problems." The lies spread quickly, and people who once smiled at her now avoided eye contact. She could feel the judgment the moment she stepped outside. One afternoon, she overheard him speaking loudly on the phone, not caring if she heard. "She's just a financial burden. She brings nothing to this house. All she does is take." Each word felt like a stone hitting her chest. She had worked so hard to help, to stay out of trouble, to be accepted. But to him, nothing she did mattered. Still, she tried to stay calm. She told herself he was just upset and would eventually move on. She focused on Simba, on keeping things normal for him. But the pressure grew heavier every day. She felt like a guest in her own home, tiptoeing around rooms she had once freely walked through. The breaking point came on a day she returned home earlier than usual. She walked quietly toward the living room and heard her mother's voice. She stopped. Her mother was speaking softly, but the words were clear enough to cut deep. "If she leaves, things will finally be peaceful." Amirah froze. She waited for her mother to defend her, to explain, to soften the words. But there was nothing else. Only silence. Only truth. Her chest tightened, and her eyes burned. She had spent her entire life trying to earn her mother's approval, doing chores, keeping quiet, swallowing pain, hoping one day her mother would see her worth. But in that moment, she understood the one thing she had avoided accepting. The two people she tried the hardest to please had never cared. Not in the way she hoped. And the home she kept fighting for had never really been hers. Amirah didn't leave the house in anger. She didn't shout or cry, or demand explanations. She simply reached a point where her heart felt too tired to keep trying. That evening, when Simba ran to her with open arms, she looked at his small face and understood that staying meant teaching him to accept disrespect. And she refused to let him grow up learning that. She walked to their room quietly and pulled out a small bag. She folded only a few clothes, just enough for them to manage. She didn't pack memories or gifts or anything that tied her to a place that never welcomed her. She held Simba's hand and said, "We are going somewhere better." He didn't ask questions. He just nodded and held her hand tighter. They stepped out without looking back. The air outside felt cool and open, like the world was finally giving her permission to breathe. She didn't know exactly where she was going, but she knew she was going toward peace, not away from it. She found a tiny apartment on the outskirts of town. The paint on the walls was peeling, and the windows creaked, but it felt safe. It felt like a place where no one could order her to move or make her feel unwanted. That first night, she sat on the floor with Simba, sharing simple food, and for the first time in years, she felt something gentle in her chest, freedom. The very next week, she looked for work without hesitation. She applied anywhere she could, and eventually she found a job as an event decorator. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and she enjoyed creating beauty with her hands. She worked nights decorating venues, arranging flowers, setting tables, and learning everything she could. During lunch breaks, she studied. She watched tutorials on her phone, wrote ideas in a small notebook, and slowly built her confidence. She didn't complain, didn't rush, didn't expect miracles. She simply kept moving, one step at a time, saving whatever she could. Simba watched her with quiet admiration. He saw her leave in courage, work in silence, and rebuild their life piece by piece. Sometimes he helped her carry small bags or handed her ribbons while she worked on decorations at home. He never complained about the small apartment or the simple meals. He was just happy to see his mother smile again. One evening, Amirah sat beside him on their thin mattress. The room was small, with only one light and second-hand furniture, but she felt proud. She wrapped her arms around him and said softly, "This place may be small, but it's ours." Simba smiled and leaned into her. And in that moment, the tiny room felt warmer than any large house she had ever lived in. Because this time, she finally belonged. Months passed and Amirah built her new life quietly. She no longer looked over her shoulder or waited for someone to shout her name in anger. She focused on work, on Simba, and on learning how to live without fear. One afternoon, while she was arranging flowers on the small table in the living room, she heard a soft knock at the door. When she opened it, she froze in surprise. Grandpa Jabari stood there. He looked older, tired, but his eyes were warm, just like the days when she was a little girl, and he used to lift her onto his lap. She quickly invited him inside, embarrassed that her home was so small. But Jabari didn't look around with judgment. He looked around with sadness, as if the walls reminded him of how much she had endured alone. He sat down slowly and took her hands in his. "I should have come sooner," he said. "I should have protected you when you were young. I failed you." His voice trembled, and Amirah felt her heart soften. She had never blamed him, but hearing him say those words brought tears to her eyes. She squeezed his hands gently, telling him it was okay, but he shook his head. "No," he insisted. "You deserved better." Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a brown envelope. The way he held it made Amirah pause. She felt a strange mix of confusion and worry. He placed the envelope on her lap and said quietly, "There is something you need to know. Something that was kept from you." With shaking hands, she opened it. Inside were official papers, land ownership documents, a business license, and a savings account passbook. She stared at them without understanding at first. Jabari explained softly, "Everything you see here was left to you by your grandmother. She loved you more than anyone. She wanted you to have a future she didn't trust others to provide." Amirah blinked, her breath catching. She whispered, "I don't understand. Why didn't I know?" Jabari's eyes filled with disappointment, not at her, but at the truth he was about to reveal. "Your mother and Bantu hid it. They kept it all from you. For years, they told the lawyer you were not ready, that you didn't need it. They controlled everything that belonged to you." Amirah felt her heart drop. She thought the betrayal had ended when she left the house, but this was deeper. This was planned. This was intentional. Jabari gently pushed the documents toward her. "You don't need to depend on anyone now. They will never control you again." That was the moment her strength cracked. Tears streamed down her face. Not from sadness, but from relief, from justice, from the realization that she finally had something of her own. Her grandmother's love had reached her years later, right on time. Amirah did not tell anyone her plans. She simply took the inheritance money and began building something of her own. She bought a few materials, practiced designs late at night, and created small decorations in her backyard just to see what she could do. Soon she turned that tiny beginning into her own event design company. She worked quietly, step by step, learning, improving, and putting her heart into every detail she created. Within a few months, people in the town started whispering her name with surprise. Her work was different, soft, clean, beautiful, and full of feeling. Her decorations made birthdays look magical, and weddings feel like fairy tales. Clients loved the way she listened carefully, never rushed, and always delivered more than they expected. They loved her gentle professionalism, the calm way she handled pressure, and the kindness she carried everywhere. Everyone felt safe trusting her with their special moments. Simba followed her everywhere like a tiny shadow. He helped pick colors, hold ribbons, and carry little boxes. Sometimes clients even booked her because they loved seeing Simba cheerfully running around the setup, talking proudly about his big sister like she was a hero. He became her small assistant, her motivation, and her reminder of why she refused to give up. One day, a client posted photos of Amirah's decorations on social media. The pictures were breathtaking, soft lights, elegant colors, and perfect arrangements. Within hours, the photos spread everywhere. People kept sharing them, writing comments. Amirah did not tell anyone her plans. She simply took the inheritance money and began building something of her own. She bought a few materials, practiced designs late at night, and created small decorations in her backyard just to see what she could do. Soon, she turned that tiny beginning into her own event design company. She worked quietly, step by step, learning, improving, and putting her heart into every detail she created. Within a few months, people in the town started whispering her name with surprise. Her work was different, soft, clean, beautiful, and full of feeling. Her decorations made birthdays look magical and weddings feel like fairy tales. Clients loved the way she listened carefully, never rushed, and always delivered more than they expected. They loved her gentle professionalism, the calm way she handled pressure, and the kindness she carried everywhere. Everyone felt safe trusting her with their special moments. Simba followed her everywhere like a tiny shadow. He helped pick colors, hold ribbons, and carry little boxes. Sometimes clients even booked her because they loved seeing Simba cheerfully running around the setup, talking proudly about his big sister like she was a hero. He became her small assistant, her motivation, and her reminder of why she refused to give up. One day, a client posted photos of Amirah's decorations on social media. The pictures were breathtaking, soft lights, elegant colors, and perfect arrangements. Within hours, the photos spread everywhere. People kept sharing them, writing comments like, "Who did this?" and "Find this designer immediately." Her work went viral without her trying to push it. She didn't brag. She didn't post long speeches. She just smiled, thanked the client, and went back to her next project. Meanwhile, Bantu was busy running around town, telling anyone who would listen that Amirah was nothing special, that she was lucky, that she would fail soon. He tried to ruin her reputation with lies, hoping someone would believe him. But nobody cared. People had already seen her work with their own eyes. They didn't hear his noise, only her results. Amirah never responded to any of his words. She didn't defend herself. She didn't argue. She simply remained silent, letting her success speak for her. Every new event she completed, every client she satisfied, and every photo that went viral drowned Bantu's lies even more. While he wasted his energy spreading negativity, she built a life from peace, focus, and dedication. Her silent rise became the loudest answer to every doubt, every insult, and every attempt to bring her down. And the best part was, she wasn't even done yet. The night of the gala felt like a turning point for Amirah. It was her biggest job yet, a grand event filled with important business leaders, celebrities, and community figures. She arrived early with Simba, carrying boxes of flowers, lights, and her carefully planned decorations. Her heart beat with excitement. This was the kind of event she once only dreamed of, and now she was the one in charge. But as she stepped inside the hall, her body froze. Standing near the entrance, in a wrinkled shirt and a tired face she barely recognized, was Bantu, the same cousin who mocked her, pushed her aside, and spread lies about her. He was not glowing with confidence anymore. He looked weak, stressed, and strangely small. Almost traveled fast. People whispered that Bantu had been fired after too many complaints about his behavior. Some said he borrowed money everywhere and couldn't pay back. Others said important people avoided him completely because of his attitude. And now, standing there, he looked like a man whose world was slowly collapsing. When he saw Amirah, he immediately pretended nothing had ever happened. He forced a smile, walked toward her as if they were old friends, and said her name softly, like he cared. "Amirah, it's been long. You're doing big things now," he said, trying to sound proud, but his voice trembled. She simply nodded and continued arranging her materials. She did not give him the drama he was expecting. Her calm silence made him uncomfortable. So he stepped closer, lowered his voice, and whispered desperately, "Can you help me? Please, just talk to your grandfather for me. He listens to you. Tell him to forgive my debts, to help me get my job back." Amirah slowly looked up. Their eyes met. For the first time, he looked powerless. For the first time, she was the one standing strong. She did not raise her voice. She did not show anger. She simply spoke the truth he needed to hear. "You taught me something important," she said quietly, her tone steady. "You taught me that not everyone deserves a seat at my table." The words hit him like a slap. He opened his mouth to speak, but nothing came out. He finally understood that the girl he once insulted had become someone he could no longer manipulate. Amirah did not wait for his response. She walked past him with dignity, carrying her box of decorations. Simba followed her proudly. The lights of the gala reflected on her face, making her look even stronger. Behind her, Banta stood alone, the same way he left her when he thought she was nothing. Only now he was the one with nothing left, and she was the one rising. The gala marked a moment Amirah would never forget. Every table sparkled with her decorations, every corner reflected the care and love she poured into her work, and every guest whispered her name in admiration. That night, she realized that she had arrived, not by luck, but by sheer determination, patience, and unwavering self-respect. The success she had quietly built over months now shone brighter than ever. After the event, invitations for more jobs started pouring in. People wanted her touch on every celebration, every corporate party, every wedding. Her business grew faster than she ever imagined. Each project reinforced her confidence, and each satisfied. Clients spread her reputation further. Amirah no longer had to prove herself to anyone. Her work did that for her. She moved into a beautiful home with Simba, a place filled with light, laughter, and space to breathe. For the first time in her life, she felt completely safe. The rooms echoed with joy, not tension. Simba ran freely, decorating corners with her, laughing at small mistakes, and learning what it meant to be proud of someone you love. Grandpa Jabari visited often. He looked at her with pride, telling her how far she had come, and reminding her how much he believed in her all along. He watched as she thrived, silently grateful that she had found her own path. Amirah never humiliated her mother or Banta publicly. She didn't post stories to shame them or confront them in front of friends or neighbors. She didn't need to. Her life itself was the answer to all the cruelty she had endured. Her peace, her happiness, her freedom were louder than any insult they could ever throw. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Simba leaned against her shoulder and asked softly, "Mama, did we win?" Amirah smiled, brushing his hair from his face. "We didn't win, my love, we healed," she whispered. In that simple truth, the audience could see everything. Sometimes the loudest victory isn't revenge, isn't shouting, isn't forcing apologies. Sometimes the most powerful triumph is living well, building a life where no one can ever make you feel small again, where no one can ever tell you to stand aside. Amirah's journey was proof that dignity and self-respect create victories deeper than wealth or recognition. She had reclaimed her life, her future, and her son's happiness. And in doing so, she became unstoppable. If this story touched your heart, don't scroll away in silence. Your one like, comment, or share can help this message reach someone who desperately needs strength today.